the long-awaited Australian launch of the Triumph TF250X. What a day it's been. Perfect track conditions. We had a lot of rain leading up to it, but a rip track. This is chocolate cake, as good as it gets. We've all had a great day, and obviously all of us in anticipation to test this bike. I want to start off with the first thing that comes to mind for my initial laps was the motor. Now, how impressive this motor is. It seems to have a nice amount of horsepower right through the range, right off the bottom into a strong mid-range, but its most impressive part is its top end over rev. It just seems to rev to the moon. But overall, it's a very easy motor to ride. You can choose whether you want to be in second gear or third gear in a corner, and it'll pull both. So to get the option of being able to ride it that way for a 250 is really quite rare. We've all heard a lot of the hype about this bike. It's been a long time coming. I guess Triumph wanted to make sure that everything was spot on before they released it to the public worldwide. So you can see the extra effort that's gone into it. Like I said, the motor was the first thing that came to mind. When I first went out on my particular bike that I was allocated for the day, I found it was a little out of balance suspension-wise. It was a little low in the rear end. Triumph, for the Aussie guys that we were dealing with here, were adamant they wanted us to ride the bike as standard, how it's meant to be, and then see what we thought of it from there, then make our changes. So after 5 minutes or so, it was super low in the rear end for me. Had to make a pretty major change. Having the opportunity to chat with Danny Ham, who did the American launch for ADB magazine, he got to ride with Ricky Carmichael over there, who suggested that he likes 102mm of ride height on the back. So I thought, hey, let's give it a little bit of a try. Around that 102 mark, we got 36mm of static sag, 101 to 102mm of ride height, and I went out and it solved all of my problems. The bike started turning really nicely. The front wheel would pick up nicely in ruts. I didn't feel like it was trying to top up and send me straight ahead in the turns. But likewise, I kind of thought, wow, it's a lot higher in the rear end. This could create some dramas for me coming into turns and start to kick the bike up and a little bit of a high rear end. It wasn't the case. It actually preferred this position. Now for me, I'm used to riding a Honda 450, which for me, I like 40mm of static sag and 104mm of ride height. So this is totally different, but the setup suits this bike. You have to have a bit of a play around with it and see what feels right for you. But with those numbers that I like on the Honda 450, if I rode with that on the Triumph 250, it felt really sagged out and low in the rear end. So clearly this bike likes a little more preload on the spring to ride a little bit higher. Anywhere around that 100 to 102mm of ride height seems to be money. Now the other interesting note here, and a great job by Triumph, they presented us with 3 options for our bike today. You could go either a standard trim bike that had stock standard spring rates on it. There was a medium one, which myself and Hammy seemed to spend most of the day on. And then there was a hard bike. So in the middle there, myself around 80, 81 kilo. I found it was spot on. My numbers measured up perfect. When I tried the standard bike, it was way too soft for me with my body weight. So the medium was absolutely spot on, but I think it was a great little thing from Triumph to be able to supply us, because hey, us media crew, we come in all different shapes and sizes. We had, quite a few that were over 90 kilo, and we had some that were down in the 70s. So to have that, I don't think I've ever had that at a bike launch, the option of a standard, a medium, and a hard version. So that was quite cool. I must say, as this track here at Briggs's house got rougher and more technical, the dirt was just spectacular all day, but the ruts got deeper and we started to get some braking bumps coming into corners and some acceleration bumps coming out, which was when we really started to have to tune in with the clickers, playing around with high speed, low speed compression on the shock, and having a little bit of a muck around with the rebound to make sure that it's not packing down as we got more and more bumps. So we were able to tune these things exceptionally well and get them handling very nicely. If I could summarize these bikes, the main thing I would say is get your balance right front to rear before you start mucking around with anything else, because they seem to me a little on the sensitive side if your balance isn't quite right front to rear. If it's a bit too low in the rear end or a little bit too high in the rear end, you're gonna pay the price. So get your balance right first and then start to tune in your clickers, whether that be compression or your rebound. Had a little bit of a play with a few other things as well. Traction control, it's got a quick shifter device. I'm a bit of a fan of quick shift. I've tried it a few times. I was lucky enough to have a quick shifter on a 93 factory Yamaha Rinaldi bike racing the Motocross of the Nations. Yes, they had that technology all the way back then, and it was mind-blowing how it worked. Putting it into practice on a production bike, I find I prefer with this particular bike to not run the quick shifter. For me, with the quick shifter, it had a tiny little bit of a miss when it would cut the ignition to slip into the next gear. And that was just putting me off ever so slightly. Now, I'm not sure if that's something that I would have to try to get used to a little bit, but I certainly preferred to go old school, a little bit of a slip of the clutch as you bang up a gear. Obviously, don't back off that throttle, what we traditionally call a race shift, and that's what seemed to work best for me around the track. Like I said, traction control, I gave it a little bit of a try. It seems to work good, but I'd love to try traction control on a rock hard baked track where you're getting a little bit of wheel spin, where I think that particular ability to try that would really make a difference. Didn't make too much of a difference today though. The two maps that you get the choice out of with the new Triumph 250 is either standard, which is no light on the map switch, or if you hit the map switch and the blue light is shining, that's a bit of a docile, smoother map that really dramatically changes the power delivery. It takes the hit away from it, smooths it right out. That is not the map for me on a 250 weighing in at 80, 81 kilo. I love the standard map. The blue one, I think for someone that's just stepped up from a 125 to a 250, or if you're on a very hard packed track, that can smooth it out a little bit. Once again, worth a try, and it's always good to have options. The more options, the better. Brakes, clutch feel, all worked exceptionally well. You got to remember, this is a brand new bike. We're not talking a KTM, Yamaha, Husqvarna, whatever it is, a Honda. We're not talking a bike that's developed over years and years and years. We're talking a bike here, the Triumph, that this is brand new, right from the ground up. So the ergos, when I first sat on it last night, I was really interested to feel what the ergos felt like. It's got really quite a flat seat profile when you're sitting up on top of it, but when you're standing, it's not too fat, not too skinny, seems to be nicely balanced. When you're up in your standing position, feels really quite comfortable, but it's easy to sit down whether you're sitting in the middle of the seat or you want to sit up near the front of the seat for a race start. It doesn't seem to want to drop you down to the middle, and you can move around nicely. Comes standard with a gripper seat on it, standard with ODI grips. All kinds of good little bonuses that you're ticking boxes. And also you can, with the mapping, you can use a phone app to be able to play around and change a bunch of selected maps that they suggest that you try. Anything from an expert to a novice to a mud to a sand, a lot of different settings for you to try. So overall, in a nutshell, obviously we could talk for about an hour or so easily and not be going over the same thing twice when talking about this brand new bike. But just to summarize, great motor, suspension needs to be set up nicely balanced. Once you've got it balanced, it feels exceptionally smooth out there on the track. And I would say the chassis seems to have a good balance between agility and stability. So it seems to tick all the boxes nicely. I think it's going to do exceptionally well out there in the market. Very impressed with the bike.